Well, welcome back to the Build Different podcast. Another great week of some awesome conversations lined up. Adam, Brian, great to see you all.
Great to see you too, Grant. And
Good
Adam,
morning.
best time
I
of the
didn't know who was going to talk first right there. Good morning.
Morning. Man, you guys it's Valentine's Day week. You guys got any fancy plans?
Big plans. I don't know. You should be telling us. He's the only
I
married
should be
guy
telling y'all.
Yeah, what do you got going on?
No, just a nice date night, no kids. So we'll have some fun. I plan not to cook this year, so we'll go out to enjoy a fun little dinner. But I feel like this is the saddest part of the year too. Football's ended, Super Bowl's on Sunday. We're like in the lull between this and March Madness. Brian, I know you're not a big fan of sports in general, but
yeah, I mean, I'll watch them. But just growing up in Boston, it's kind of tough to be like when you call yourself a sports fan. Everybody's so diehard about everything. So
I was waiting to see where you were going to go with that, being like, oh yeah, no, Boston's not big, not much of a sports town, you know.
No, my brothers are insane. I always just kind of went a different way.
Yeah, luckily it's only like 3 weeks till March Madness hits. I don't know, the whole golf league. You guys been watching that now too? Golf is back. It's kind of a fun new way of watching sports. Is this turned into a sport talk show? Maybe I'm transitioning us here.
Oh, I like that. I like where you're headed though with the March Madness thing. I was going to ask you, did you participate in any Super Bowl squares pools this weekend?
I mean, other than just the dominance of the Eagles, but no, I was rooting for the Eagles. We have a lot of Eagles fans on our team, I feel like, and I don't know. It was not the outcome I was expecting, but I was actually, my brother-in-law had some fun bets on the game, so it was cool to like watch some of the bets that he was. I don't bet on sports, but it was pretty interesting to.
You're talking about like prop bets, like
yeah. It was pretty interesting.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, but no, it was a good time. But let's get into it, fellas. Speaking of sports, let's give a little rundown of what we're going to chat about here today. Some topics and segments we're going to go over, project highlights, some trending tools. I'm pretty excited about that one. And then you had to be there. This is going to be fun. Rundown of some segments, lots of great stuff that we're going to run through and talk about. But yeah, just after the Super Bowl, man, you guys know me pretty well. I love sports and I could talk about sports all the time. Have you guys noticed the amount of stadiums that are just like popping up like dandelions? I mean, it is like, it's absurd. I mean, I can't go and scroll through LinkedIn without seeing a sweet project update or some highlights of some stuff. I'm going to even like pull this up here. Let's see if I can do it live. And I apologize. I know some folks actually just listened to us. And there were some comments in on Spotify that were like, hey, I can't see what you guys are talking about. So you got to like narrate over it. So I appreciate that. But yeah, the thing I'm popping up here now is just this ridiculously cool FPV project spotlight highlight of, was this the Titan Stadium? I mean, should all project highlights be done like this, fellas? I mean, this is pretty gnarly.
Setting the bar high.
Definitely setting the bar high. I want to know where this video went and who commissioned it. Like, is this like an owner effort? Did we show this in the OAC meeting? Like, oh, there was that issue that went by. I like it though. It's awesome.
I mean, it's impressive. I remember I was on a stadium that like FPVs was like first starting to take off, and someone did this on a weekend and like put it on YouTube, and basically the job was like freaking out because we were like, how is this possible? What are they doing? It was pretty incredible. And so, yeah, it was pretty sweet when I saw that. I think that's a Titan Stadium, right, fellas? That's going up. But yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. I was going to say, every time I see an FPV drone in a building, my mind just goes to sprinkler heads. I don't know if anybody else feels the same way. I'm just like, oh man, like please, like whoever's flying, like I hope they do have a pretty good idea that there are things in the ceiling. It's not just empty, but yeah.
Yeah.
Having one FPV Avata, it's the Avata, right? That's the one. Having one experience having flown that around a tower crane and just experiencing how that whole thing goes. Every time I see those, I'm amazingly impressed with how well some of those pilots are actually controlling those things.
I mean, it is pretty outlandish how, I mean, yes, and I've actually seen you fly FPV, Adam, and I would say beware. It is, it's pretty bad.
It was basically a scene out of Top Gun is what you're saying.
I mean, the excitement coming from you flying it was not as good as the actual flying. So we'll just leave it at that. Yeah, I mean, what actually caught me onto this was, let's see if I can pull this up too, was actually the Superdome. I saw this video talking about just all the new kind of renovations that went into it before the Super Bowl. And I've actually been to the Superdome. It's pretty sweet. I mean, New Orleans, obviously great host for the Super Bowl. But it kind of got me thinking, and fellas, this is what I wanted to kind of camp on here for this first topic. It's just stadium construction is like unmatched. It is like quite crazy how it's changed over the years. The dynamics of joint ventures kind of being a thing, the technology that goes into it, really the technology that's used to actually build it. We could camp there for a while, but I've just been on this complete binge watching on YouTube and some other stuff of just the Bills Stadium, which is shout out to the Bills, man. They're making some incredible videos of how basically like kind of behind the scenes of how this project gets built. A lot of controversy on this stadium, no roof in Buffalo. Have not made it out to the stadium yet, but yeah, I just wanted to kind of camp here for a little bit and just talk about this idea of stadiums. And there's a lot of topics we could kind of talk about here, but I think just the first one is like, yeah, what stadiums have you guys been to? Have you been a part of any in construction? Adam, I know your background. You worked at a company that primarily, specializes in this. And I think it's just interesting because we all, I think, see these projects and kind of, from the other side of the fence, kind of glamour at them and think, man, these are pretty incredible, projects and structures to be built. But yeah, just maybe kind of around the horn a little bit of, just your experience. And I'm sure we'll get into some good stuff around kind of the topic in general.
Yeah. When we were in our pre-show notes here, I kind of was like, what stadiums you've been to and been a part of, kind of kicked me down a little rabbit hole, which I also echo your sentiment on the love of sports. So did my own little count. I've been to 7 NFL, 9 MLB, 2 NHL, and 5 NBA stadiums, which has been pretty cool. I had never done that total myself. But then sort of professionally in my previous roles, I've been part of 2 stadium construction projects, Levi Stadium out in Santa Clara for the 49ers, and then Golden One Center in Sacramento for the Kings. And both, I mean, you get to see, to your point about, which side of the fence are you on? You get to see the inner workings of a stadium project, the team, how sensitive the league that they're building for is when we talk about taking photos during construction and just the logistics and all those sorts of things. So it is a pretty incredible thing. The big highlight, maybe I was going to throw into the mix here, is that you look at the dollar signs, right? The budget for each of these things keeps going up and up and up and up. And it's like, where does it end? When are we going to see our first $10 billion stadium? It's pretty wild.
I love the fun fact. I'll throw one in there too. I've actually been at Gillette Stadium more times for Country Fest than I have the actual Pats games.
There it is. I knew we were going to divert away from sports here at some point.
I like it.
And we'd always scalp tickets in high school, like for Fenway games, just because it's right off the train. So that's my little ode to
I think
sports,
you bring up a good point too, Brian, though. It's like, yeah, these aren't just stadiums, right? They're venues and they're places that people, and honestly, that's what's even crazy about I think design and construction of them is like, they're not just for one sport or one event. Like, man, I think some of the coolest ones I've seen lately have been, I think this was over in Europe, that was it the Real Madrid stadium? Did you guys see this? That like the whole grass, the whole pitch, I should, be corrected when I call it here, but like the whole pitch basically went under the stadium to grow real grass so that they could like multi-purpose it for other events. And I'm like, dude, like
we went to a Monday Night Football game in Phoenix together. That whole field, I think, fact check me on this, but I think that stadium was one of the first real grass stadiums indoors that they roll out the outside.
I knew you were going to bring this up, or I was hoping you wouldn't bring this up, but I got to share a pretty embarrassing story. So college, I mean, I'm just like enamored with these jobs. Like I too was fortunate to work on a stadium. It was actually an internship when I was still in college. Fellas, I wasn't the guy that had posters of other stuff in my dorm room. I had a poster of that stadium, the State Farm Stadium, in my dorm room. Don't ask me why. We had like printing credits or quotas, that you could get at the labs, and I plotted that thing out, and I was like, dude, I want to go to that. And actually, we went to it for the first time this last October.
You should add that to the bottom line. Grant's a giant nerd, if everybody doesn't know.
I mean, it was crazy. That was like the first stadium to ever like consider that, right? And then the Vegas Raiders Stadium kind of followed suit. That mean, that job, crazy. Mortensen McCarthy JV, tons of stuff there too. But yeah, Brian, sorry, I was derailing you from your stadium.
No, I was just you actually like changed the topic in my head. Like you kind of remind me of Ted Lasso a little bit, like in a great way. Like now that you brought up the football stuff, like football as in soccer.
Is it because I use the word pitch? You know, like I gotta use these like actual terms of what sports should be.
I've never thought about that, Brian. I think you just nailed that. Grant is Ted Lasso. He has lots and lots of little sayings. He's got little catchphrases.
We need to use the AI filter to put Grant's face on like the dartboard scene.
Yes.
Wow.
I could see.
Right.
I could see
new
that
project for this next episode. Brian, we're on it.
Do we just call that a new segment? Is the Ted Lasso corner or what it is? But no, I mean, thanks guys. I don't know. I actually haven't seen Ted Lasso, which I know may be putting me in another box. I know,
dude.
Guys, all right.
All people in the world, I would have expected.
No kidding.
Stop recording. Let's just have Ted Lasso credits. I actually have not seen it, so.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, it's all the subscriptions.
I'll give you my Apple TV login.
I was gonna say, you guys.
Autobiography, Grant.
All right. So
hopefully Apple's not listening to this. We're not streaming on Apple Music, are we?
No. But yeah, right. Back on the even the Raiders stadium, right? So that was host of the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Because Brian, I think this is an interesting kind of idea and concept is joint ventures, right? So Mortensen and McCarthy, two giant stadium builders, in the country. And what's interesting about that job, I remember reading some really interesting case studies of so Procore. They're both Procore users and how they like combine their Procore instance and just like I'm just kind of fascinated around this topic of like how technology gets used on these projects to build them, right? And then add like a ton of layers of complexity to joining teams and like personalities and like strengths. It is like staff, like that is just a unique kind of dynamic. But like I feel like these jobs almost become like a magnifying glass into what teams are actually, or what really I should say, what companies are actually doing for the use of technology. Would you guys agree with that or?
For the tech side, I mean, I think it's the biggest stress test because every startup looks at the ENR top 400 and is like, great, our target account list is, 1 through 50. But so many technology companies have to adjust their entire platform to even work for some of these scenarios. Like just the scale can absolutely break your system with the amount of data going into it, the expectations of like turnaround times of when something's getting brought out to or like reported on. I just think it's, if there's any startup companies and they instantly want to go for those, like just be aware that that's exactly the type of testing you're going to get put through.
Well, I mean, it's crazy to me that they actually get used on those jobs. I mean, like think about like where, like coming into that project, like that team's got so many other things on their mind. like if you're testing a new tech out on a stadium, like, whew, that's not like just sink or swim. That's like sink and tread very fast to see if it. I don't know. Like Adam, what do you think of that?
Well, to that point, you also have probably one of the largest project staffs that you have to onboard with too. Like, I mean, I don't remember the exact number, but I want to say it was in the 4,000 to 5,000 people on SoFi Stadium at peak. So it's like if you're rolling out some new tech and you're expecting everybody on the job site or a large percent of the job site to use it, talk about onboarding and training and like just the massive effort that is. But I also think too, to kind of the previous point you guys were talking about, stadiums represent I brought it up earlier, a large budget, right? So usually most new tech is kind of a rounding error on these massive projects, right? So there's a much more of an appetite from a cost perspective to say, hey, cool, let's try this new thing. It's going to cost $100,000. And, if it works, great. If it doesn't, we tried. I think that's great. And then two, from an executive leadership perspective, these projects are such like crown jewel jobs that, you have these VPs and GMs and executive level individuals that are all involved that really want to showcase what their company can do. Mm-hmm. And so they're much more open and receptive to like, hey, what's that new cool new tool? My experience on that was with Golden One Center in Sacramento. I was on the Pursuit team and it was the first really like accepted and I'll call it valued implementation of 4D. Right. And this was, a number of years ago, obviously, but like we did this whole entire demo and rebuild sequence in 4D for that interview. And it was one of the things that really set us apart. it showed that we knew the project inside and out better than anybody. And, so our leadership was so pumped on that, and they really enabled me to go and run with it at that point. So there's a lot of great things that stadiums can do for tech.
Grant, that one thing I just want to add there is what we've been seeing a lot of is because of these joint ventures, one of the GCs tend to be more technologically advanced and really drive that. And I think that is just such a catalyst for the industry, but also when that team disperses after that project, if they don't directly go to another stadium right away, they end up getting dispersed in these other smaller pockets, and they get to bring that knowledge of how it was used. I think it's just overall, these big projects are really like a breeding ground for innovation across the entire company.
Yeah, I mean, well said. I didn't honestly even think about that, of like just when the teams disperse and their kind of opportunity to see tech in a way that maybe they weren't exposed to. I mean, you guys know, like, these teams are all traveling teams. They all, go from one to the next. And yeah, I think what's also kind of fascinating about it too, I want to maybe camp here for a second, is like, what categories of technology have you guys seen or heard or, kind of experienced from afar that are the most sticky? Because, so Adam, you said like 5,000 people, day in, day out on that job. Like, I've seen really workforce management as a tech, like, really start to take off. Tools like, Genda out there that does a lot of kind of workforce tracking and management. I mean, just purely because you have that many people. You talk about like safety tools of, how do you track certifications and what people can do. But, I'm curious if you guys have any like categories of tech that have really stood out kind of in that realm.
I mean, I've never been on a project that large, but I could only imagine anything to do with scheduling deliveries and like showing that could probably is like a make or break. Like a lot of these scenarios, they're building these massive projects, but a couple of the entrance ways, there's only so many ways you can bring in large amounts of material.
Yeah.
And time schedules, subs get pissed off if the loading dock's blocked off in certain areas. So I can only imagine anybody in that space is probably worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to teams like Plot. If you haven't heard of them, go give them a shout. Yep. Chris on their team. Like, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
I was going to throw in too, and I'm usually the guy that rolls my eyes when we start plugging our own stuff. But like anything, because these massive projects usually have a lot of remote stakeholders and just the footprint and square footage of the size of these jobs. I mean, reality capture on any platform, whether it's what we're involved in or anything else, just gives so much more visibility into these projects that you can, when your architect's in New York City and your project team is in LA, and it just gives more people's eyes on the jobs.
Adam, something you said actually has always stuck with me. I don't know if I ever told you, but you're like, there's no water cooler talk at that scale, right? Like, someone may take a photo that is used by someone else in that project that doesn't know that person exists. Yep. And the photo is so unbiased, it doesn't care who took it. But as long as you can find it by a location or on a drawing, it's going to provide value to someone without them ever even knowing that it ended up providing value for them.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I worked for Turner while we were doing SoFi, and having met and spoken with the senior, VP superintendent that was running that job, it blew my mind. I'm like, how do you manage? What is the reporting structure that, like, you have to have so much trust in 4 layers below you, the superintendent that's working on just the site work package? It's like, you don't talk to that guy every single day on this job. And so to that point, it's like, whatever those pictures are and whoever said whatever, like, it's going to work its way up. And I'm glad I had a little influence on your life there, Brian.
Yeah, it was one of the fewer good influences
good.
On my life.
I was just curious because I want to understand. I mean, what's crazy is how many are going on. I just pull up a wiki page, which, going back to my college days as well here. So Bills Stadium, Nissan Stadium in Nashville. That's Titans. New Memorial Stadium. Oh yeah, Kansas Jayhawks. Ryan Field. Adam, you've been to that one. Northwestern. Yep. That's a crazy one going on. USF cool in Tampa. I guess the Vegas Stadium. That's
the new Inter Miami Freedom Park right there. I just drove by that recently, actually.
I mean, this is like 20 projects going on.
These are all just active right now in this filter?
Yeah. I mean, this is like this is across the whole country. Sorry, I filtered it by the states here, but yeah, I mean, this is just within, I think these are active and or in motion essentially. Because like I'm looking at the Vegas Oakland or the Vegas Athletics, right? Like that hasn't started, but they've like announced what they want to do with it. And but yeah, I mean this is crazy, and obviously these are like obviously different sizes and kind of all over the place. But I mean it is.
Thing to consider here too, and maybe just another talking point is like with all of these being active projects, what I like to think about is how many other projects are in the works. How many are there in like the pre-sale almost, like just project development? I mean, there's one right here. I'm sitting in Reno, Nevada. There's one right here in Reno at what's called the Grand Sierra Resort, where there's a proposed NBA basketball stadium that's supposedly part of $1 billion development that's going to be happening over here in the next few years. And it's like how many more of those are out there on somebody's desk right now talking about upgrades to the Dolphins or upgrades to the Twins or whatever organization it is. So they're just going to keep popping up. It's crazy.
Yeah,
that's such a good point. It's not even just completely new build stadiums, but it's additions or renovations. Like Suffolk just did some work on the Gillette Stadium. Lee Kennedy also is doing work on Fenway, things like that. Like there's additions and not just that, but like the hotel package. Parking packages, things like that.
Yeah, I think just to kind of put a button on this one, like the different types of tech that definitely rise to the top is, workforce tracking, safety, logistics, and getting people there. I might agree with you, Adam. I think like reality capture for sure has to be at the top of that list from like a size and scale and visibility and who is physically on site, who's not, like going back in time. You talk about like an aerial capture. The stadiums are huge. And what's crazy is just even think like, yeah, I mean, Brian, you said it too, like the renovation component. Like I've seen some crazy stuff from some service providers out there that are out there scanning, different, really different stadiums because they want to renovate, and how reality capture is just a huge part of even that process of like, all right, let's digitize this thing. Like, what do we have? What do we need to consider? And man, it truly is crazy.
It's a fun one,
especially when
sure.
Especially when you're trying to attract top talent. I can only imagine like every couple of years, that's outdated. Let's go rip everything apart on the locker rooms or stuff like that.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, man, you guys know I could camp here for a long, long time. But yeah, I think what's just fascinating about this topic alone is like, all right, how do you really consider all the things that go into it? And I don't know, it just felt like a reasonable topic to camp on. Maybe Super Bowl, maybe some other personal interests here. But moving down the list, I want to kind of get to trending tools, and this one actually kind of came about. One. Any favorite like Super Bowl commercials? Anything that stayed out for you guys? ChatGPT got a big shout out. I heard that they didn't even use ChatGPT to make the commercial either, which is a whole side topic. I'm sure people.
Did you like that commercial? Like, did it do anything for you?
I wouldn't say it was my favorite, but I was intrigued enough to like watch the first 10 seconds of like, where's this going, and then pop in the ChatGPT logo, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's pretty interesting.
Honestly, I think that Procore ad the Procore safety ad we just saw, dude, that could have been a Super Bowl commercial.
Can we just give like a huge shout out to that Procore team?
Wow.
Like that was awesome. If you haven't seen it, go check out their LinkedIn page. I'm sure it's on there. And yeah, I was just like, that could have been a Super Bowl commercial if you think about it, Brian. They probably didn't have the $8 million for 30-second spotlight, but honestly, maybe they probably did.
Maybe they're getting there. You just a couple less banners in the airport on the way to groundbreak, and I'm sure we could probably make it work.
Nice. That Procore bash or the groundbreak bash could be its own commercial there. Adam, any commercials that stood out to you or things that?
I don't know. I wasn't overall I like the funny ones. I wasn't overall impressed with too many great ones. The most cringeworthy one was whatever, I forget which company it was even. Maybe I blacked it out, but the like skin hat, the cowboy hat commercial, was that like a Pringles? Yeah, I was right? Like, it just made my skin crawl. I didn't like that one.
I mean, it was a little weird, but it made you watch, and here we are talking about it, so.
Definitely did, yeah. They did their job.
Yeah. I think one thing that stood out to me was, and what actually kind of prompted this segment here is just like, I saw some stuff that I was like, man, I've been drinking that Kool-Aid for a while. I'm surprised that more people don't know about it. And Brian, you were actually the one that got me hooked on this. So this segment, really what we wanted to kind of do is think of like, hey, what were some tools that stood out from us from 2024 of just like, hey, like things that I would almost classify I can't live without. And one of them here, you can see it at the bottom little ticker here, but I mean, Brian, tell me about these Meta glasses, and I'm actually going to put mine on here and see maybe if I can record and we can get Connor to edit in some of this cool behind the scenes of what some stuff looks like. I went with
not guy over here.
You got the transitions?
Well, so I put them in after, which is a whole nother topic. I actually got the normal lenses or the like whatchamacallit lenses and then flipped them out. But yeah, they're sweet. I mean,
yeah, no. These glasses are they've single-handedly changed my life.
Whoa.
Think about it. So not just the viral like TikTok, Instagram Reels video, but
which,
like
by the way, we need to get Brian a million view chain. Last year he got a million view video. Maybe we'll post the link to that in the chat too. But
yeah, let me know if you guys got the budget for it. I'll take it. And yeah, but nonetheless, I believe wearable glasses and just how simple these were, not just from like the audio standpoint where you actually don't have to have earbuds. The sound somehow goes through. It's not induction, but it's something else. But along with that, just how easy it is for me just to like snap something. I could only imagine if I was still in the field, how I would not be using these, with the adjustments, obviously, to make them.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a second, because I think that's what is interesting about this. So you got them, and then I was super intrigued by them because I saw some stuff that you were doing, and I was like, yeah, hey, let's get the budget out, get the credit card out, let's see what these things are like. And dude, I was shocked. I honestly, this is going to sound bad as a buyer here, I didn't even know they had like audio. Like I was just getting them for like a capture purpose, and I put them on, and I remember like it was playing a song from my phone, and I was like kind of blown. I was like taken back. I was like, wait a second, this thing has a really good audio. I was sitting on my couch, and my wife was like, I was like kind of bobbing my head and like kind of getting into it. And she's like, what are you doing? And I didn't even realize other people around me couldn't hear from them. And this whole world got unlocked of like, wait a second, I can now like listen to things, and it's like not earbud, and it's open ear. And the audio part of it, I think, was something I for sure was like, oh, I didn't even realize that was a big part of these things.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of times people, even on job sites, you got to tell them, hey, take out your earbuds. Like can't do it, because if there's an emergency, you're not gonna be able to hear anything. But I keep these things on the subway. Like my preferred method, New York City subway, you want to stay vigilant, you want to stay alert, like being able to have those, which I'm curious, like if there's gonna get like rewritten rules on these things being used on job sites. Nonetheless, just how many times have you been in a scenario where you need to like communicate with somebody and like just like a design team, but being able to do it live? I know that they only allow live streaming on Instagram and Facebook, which is great for like my mom, who loves to do that for some reason. But I really hope to see us being able to like leverage that at some point. I mean, just imagine with the design team in person.
Like, fellas, you guys remember back in the day of like the Google glasses, right? That looked like a doctor with the little like sidebar, and kind of, you could see different elements in there. Definitely didn't take off because they didn't look natural, which is another thing I think Meta really nailed here, was how natural they look. They don't really, I keep going back to my wife, but she's like, oh yeah, they just look like normal sunglasses. And I'm like, cool. Then that checks every box that she would ever say on the tech side. But like, yeah, what's interesting about these two is that I think, Brian, you bring up some interesting points of like, it may not check all the boxes, but it definitely opens up ideas of like concepts that I think could be really interesting. Just even in like translation, right? Like think about how many different languages are spoken on a job site, and, being able to interact with folks. Like, I think that's pretty fascinating too, of like just kind of live translation of different languages and being able to speak, and how that all kind of play. That to me was super fascinating. I think you bring up a good point of like live streaming an issue. I mean, instead of holding up your phone, you're like using both of your hands, and they can see, what you're pointing to. And I don't know. I've just been surprised at how much I've like actually enjoyed using them, instead of them being like okay, this is like kind of a cool tech thing. But Adam, you're kind of the odd boy out here. Like what's kind of your thoughts or hesitations or reservations? I mean, you've seen these, and Brian and I wear them in meetings and look kind of goofy, but
I think I said something. I might still be waiting for my Christmas present in the mail that got lost from you. So, they're interesting. I've definitely tried. I forgot where we were, but I put Brian's on at one point just to kind of test him out and play with him. And, it kind of brings up, in terms of like job site usage, we've gone through this evolution of, people walking around with 360 cameras, and, it's like, oh, it's Big Brother. It kind of looks, you look like a doofus wearing a 360 camera on your hard hat, and it's morphed into this thing where it's like, oh, it's wearable, it's discreet. You don't know about it. It will be interesting to see, to your point, Brian, if they come out with or maybe they do. I don't know what safety certification these things have, but it would be interesting to see.
The adjustments on people's regular like prescription glasses.
Mm-hmm.
You get like the side and like sides. And also talking about that hard hat mount, that reminded me of the Tubi commercial. Actually, I figured like that would be a pretty funny parody video to do. But anyways,
for sure.
Sorry.
No, I definitely think it's interesting tech. Be curious to see what's the. I seem to remember somebody telling me about a video duration. What's the max video duration on there?
Yeah,
3 minutes now.
Yeah, 3 minutes.
When
it came out, I think it was only 30 seconds or 60 seconds maybe. And yeah, I mean, that's the other thing too. You guys, I don't know how big of like Tesla fans you are, and I know they're following really love software updates to their cars. I kind of feel like the same thing. Like there's been some neat stuff that like software wise has kind of enabled these things to do that. We didn't even talk about the AI part of it, right? Of like being able to look at something and dictate what it is that's going on in your surroundings. Like that's pretty crazy too. When you think about, I know Brent, you've talked a lot about like training. Imagine going out to a job site and be like, look at a complex piece of equipment, and that equipment has some interesting, tell me more about this piece of equipment. Like what's going on here? And I think what's interesting, like, even that dynamic of like, you think about training, perspective, like what that could bring in.
Not just that, but the file sizes are so light and they download right to your phone when you're on the same Wi-Fi, or you can force download it, that you can just drop those in the GPT now. And like you take a photo, you have a question about like, not necessarily about construction as much as, you could do it for that, but with everything else, right?
Yeah.
It just opens up this world of photo, video, boom, I'm texting it to you in 30 seconds or less. Mm-hmm. Download it. I'm not going to my computer and plugging something in. I'm not really doing like this whole robust process. It's on my phone if I'm on the same Wi-Fi pretty much right away.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff going on here, and we could camp here for a long time too. I just think even like the price, the entry point, the like two main things that I think are value points of audio, video, photo, like those are, I think, just some interesting things. And kudos, man, they made them look good. They look good. That if you're a transition lens person, like there's some indoor outdoor stuff that could be pretty cool. But so Brian, did you say this was your tech tool of 24? I can't remember if you stole this one.
Yeah. No, I'll take this one. I think you're probably bigger on the Osmo than anybody I know.
Yeah.
And, but nonetheless, great acquisition by Meta. I know they've acquired companies in the past like Oculus. Yeah, I believe Oculus like 9 years ago, where they want to do some VR stuff, but like it, just like the Quest, I know they're working through those, but this is the first acquisition to product that's been in everybody's hands, I've felt, from them.
Yeah.
On the hardware side.
And shout out for the Super Bowl commercial, right? Like Adam, you were saying something about like someone nudging you or asking you about it as those videos were like popping up. And there's probably 2 or 3 videos I feel like they had of, just spotlighting the normacy of wearing wearable tech. Like I think up until this point, there weren't really any tools that made it look normal.
If Adam's your source into all things technology, then you're in
bad shape. Bad shape.
Is that what we say? Bless your heart.
Bless your heart. Yeah, not a good look if you're getting your news from me.
Yeah, that's right. All right, so I'm going to share my tech tool of 25. This one was kind of a surprise. Man, DJI has more money than mine that I would like to say. But this Osmo Pocket, so I don't know if you guys have been following the Osmo line of like DJI stuff, but yeah, Brian, there you go. All of us have it here. What's interesting, so this started out as like a mobile phone, like a smartphone stabilizer, pretty interesting. And I remember watching some videos when this first got announced and released, and people were like, dude, why would you use this instead of just your phone, or even your phone with a stabilizer? And I definitely would say I was one of those skeptics. I definitely would say I was one of the people that was like, cool, but don't know if it's really practical. And then there were just some really unique instances where I found myself thinking like, dude, this would actually be pretty nice. And one of them was our podcast, like recording this on the go. I mean, this is you want to know like what's in the goodie bag of how we record these, when we're out on site. And I mean, it's 3 of these things. We set them up, tripod, we got some, the Osmo mics that pair up with them really well. Great video quality, super compact, really good, I think, just outcomes and deliverables from it. And Adam, I think you brought up something cool that I didn't even think about. If I were back, out in the field and wrapping up and doing O&M videos and stuff, like put this thing on a little monopod and have it be able to track you around a room. Because I mean, this is truly the like one-man band video tool of just being able to like have it all in one, and then the clippable audio mic that goes really well. Fellas, I am surprised at how much I've used this. Again, like very cost-effective, barrier of entry. I mean, all the specs here. I'm sure you guys have probably seen this. Being used. But yeah, just Adam, I know you're a big fan of this. I think I got you hooked on this. Like Adam, Brian got me hooked on the Meta glasses. But yeah, what's been your take?
I mean, I think the point about every anyone who's done commissioning and close out on a project knows that owner training videos are a big piece. And at least in my experience, we've hired out for like professional videographers and whatnot to record that with our trade partners and the folks that are putting those trainings on. I mean, you didn't call it out, but a lot of our site visit series too, like the build different site visit videos, a lot of that content is shot on these same cameras. So it really has taken dumb old Adam and made me, somewhat of a professional photographer with a pretty minimal entry.
Whoa. I would say videographer. Let's leave it at that. Not professional.
Yeah, professional. We'll drop the pro word, but yeah, cool. I mean, they're also great if you get one on the company budget. Feel free to use it for concerts that you go to, family gatherings. I've used this quite a bit in the personal realm too.
The other part that was I kind of surprised about, I mean, yeah, great battery life, which you'd kind of come to expect, but also it being on an SD card, like being able to just pop out the SD card, put it over to your computer, do some things with that. Like, yeah, it's just, there's some really great stuff that I can't, do you remember how much these are? I can't even remember how much.
Total bundle in, I think it's going to be $650 with like the creator pack.
Or yeah, I guess the creator pack. Yeah, $600.
I highly recommend the creator pack because it comes with the battery extensions and the microphone, the DJI microphone, which is amazing. You just turn it on and it plugs right in.
I mean, Brian, you've been talking a lot about like pre-con site visits, right? Like with subs and just like doing site evaluation walks. Like imagine having this and just like you're on a tour, right? And like if a sub can't make it, you're behind the pack and that microphone's wirelessly connected in here. And there's so many other use cases I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface on of what it can be used for. But yeah, I mean,
I'll give
agree.
you one more right now. So I was just talking to Paul Hedgepath, got a text. He was, texting him this week, actually last week, where he was asking about, hey, do I just buy the gimbal for my phone or, I know, what do you guys use for the videos you shoot? Right. I showed him, get the Pocket 3, trust me. And I'm like, okay, well, what are you doing with it? He's like, look, we're just shooting our own content of our superintendents for internal training videos and also just externally showing the stuff that we've been doing for years. That I think the concept of keep everything close to the chest because that's our secret sauce is starting to go away, and people are starting to realize that you need to promote these things, especially when you're trying to attract, top talent, newer people, especially different generations that, that appreciate those levels of things. But training videos internally, like your marketing teams are probably going to thank you because of, you're not just doing something on an outdated iPhone, you're shooting something of high quality that they can take as well, where they're spending a lot of time in pursuits and other things that are more revenue generating. But it does, social and content like that is important as well.
Yeah. I just think the user generated content stuff, applying that back to construction, you talk about recruiting, you talk about just like personalizing your company. Again, no camera is just going to like quickly change that, right? But it's how you use it, which I think is incredibly fun. I mean, imagine if a marketing team had this and just said, all right, hey, job site, project engineer, APM, superintendent even, like, could you just kind of give us some, what it's like to be a superintendent, what it's like to be a project engineer? Like I've actually seen some, shout out to Rogers O'Brien. They had a really cool social post that was like a day in the life of one of their team members, right? And it's like, that's the kind of stuff that, I don't know, again, you're going to probably question like, oh, I can just do all this with my phone. I would say like, well, then why aren't you doing it? Like I have found that when I have this and we're out on jobs or we're doing certain things, like it's very unintrusive, right? Like Adam, you said that of like, it just doesn't look like a giant setup. It's not intimidating. You're getting really good quality audio, good video. Anyway, this has definitely made my list of tools that, and I think there's even some rumors of them coming out with a new one and different things of, I don't know. I'm sure you could, add some more features and stuff in here. But if a new one comes out, like look for these prices, I'm sure to drop a little bit too. And yeah, so was this yours, Adam? I can't remember.
No, I think this was another one of yours, but this is probably also where we podcasters here. I've heard this too many times. Like, we are an unsponsored. This list of tech tools that we're going through is literally Grant, Brian, and Adam's. Like, what did we in a box? What did 2024 do for us on the tech side of things? And so,
what's in our tool bag?
Yeah, we're not getting commissions on DJI Osmo Pocket 3.
Unless Brian's sending out his affiliate links there. So Paul, be on the lookout. Maybe if you clicked on that link, Brian got a little kickback from that. But
that'd be nice. That along with the $1 million chain, I'll take those any day.
The milli chain. All right, last one, fellas. This genuinely is one that I would be incredibly sad if went away. I was led onto this tool. It's a meeting note-taking app, which I'm sure many of you are rolling your eyes of like, oh, there's a million of them out there, and there probably are. But shout out to Ben Stocker. He was in a meeting with us and sent me over a meeting minute like summary. So sorry, I didn't even say Fathom. Check it out. Incredible tool. I mean, I'm like blown away of just what transcribing meetings, what outputs you can get from them, the speed in which you can send meeting minutes. I mean, if anyone listening here has done coordination meetings or OIC meetings or sub meetings and like taken notes, like been the note taker, like I remember those days. And so maybe that's why this tool has just like been so ridiculous. And Adam, I got so many things I can say to this, but I mean, I feel like I kind of caught you onto it, and I know you're a big fan of it too. And just, give us some highlights, because I could go on for days about just what I've liked about it. But
yeah, I think I was in the same meeting that you were in with Ben, and we got that summary email. So cool thing, I had a few things on this one. After every meeting, you get an auto-generated email with the task list. Every attendee of the meeting, I should say, gets that same summary email with all of the, the takeaways, the action items, the summary of the meeting, all that good stuff. The action items piece for me was pretty much a game changer, because having been the one with pencil and paper in a meeting before, trying to jot those down, it also gives me the ability, because I am now familiar with what the output is, it gives me the ability to be more present in the meetings and not worry so much about, shit, I gotta write that down or whatever, go through that list of creating action items, if you will. And then, obviously you're probably going to hit on like the chat summary. It's almost ChatGPT for meetings, man. It's crazy.
This is crazy. So, I mean, yes, like you're going to get good summaries. There's tools out there that can do that. And honestly, I didn't even do much research into like, pick the best one. One thing I was shocked about this one is this like Ask Fathom section, which genuinely is like a chatbot for the meeting. And I've been shocked at how much I've used this, of just being like, I mean, I go on tangents, you guys know, in meetings, and it's like, all right, how do I we talked about this. Can you recall and like point me to and take me back to the point of that meeting where this was discussed, or this attendee brought up some really interesting points. Can you summarize the point? Like, basically gives you the flexibility to like fully deconstruct the meeting any way that you want. And then it gives you like hyperlinks back to that specific point. I'm telling you, this is like ridiculous. And maybe I'm just like so unexposed to this stuff, which is why it like stood out to me. But man, I don't know that I have ever been in a meeting that, I mean, I think you even said it too, Adam, like how much more present you can be just knowing that this is like a superpower on the back end that you have access to. And man, no kickbacks from Fathom. I don't got referral links and any of that stuff, but man, if it's not on your radar, like get it on there fast. Like this is almost a like start of 2024 tool that I'm sure is been around for a while.
Just also, I'm pretty sure that, it goes without saying, have a good idea of what meetings you should have that in and what meetings you shouldn't, especially if you want attorney-client privilege. I'm just going to be the skeptic there.
Yeah, there you go.
I've been seeing some people, I've been seeing one in the VC world talking about they've been using it in board meetings. So, do you mind if I have my note taker in here? And you start talking about some very, very serious topics. So, but I mean, imagine like the lessons learned recap at the end of a project. If you have this in your OEC oh my gosh.
I mean, well, let's break that up into two parts. One, I learned the hard way when I first got this. Got way too excited. Didn't look at my like notification settings. I won't go into this full story, but there's basically some conversations in a meeting that got recapped and automatically sent notes to people in that meeting that it just didn't end well. So yes, check your notification settings of if you do use this before you have your first meeting. Because I think you bring up a really good point, Brian. Like, it is really important, these tools. I mean, this is actually a really good intersection of where tech is amazing, but where tech can be really bad if you don't like have forethought and like think about how and what it's like being used for. So yes, big asterisk disclaimer, think about these things before you use it. But yeah, I think you bring up a great point too. Like, we all talk about how important it is to talk about lessons learned. I mean, Adam and I were in a meeting here the other day, and we were talking about like, we wanted to summarize something and think of it in a way that we could put in a nice little demo or a memo or a document together. And the two of us were just like, well, why don't we just open up a Fathom meeting and just hash it out and talk about it, and then use that as like our start to this document. And I mean, when you think about like lessons learned and project, stories and recaps of things, like, whoo, yeah, look out. I mean, it can be a really, really cool tool. And what's awesome too is like, if I've missed meetings and Adam's had it on and, I'll get the email summary, I can't tell. I mean, I went on a vacation earlier this year and caught up with like all the weekly meetings that happened in an hour, just like reading through these notes that got taken. And I don't know, fellas, I could camp on here for a long, long time. And it's just a game-changing tool. That gets used too much, but it's ridiculous.
For the people listening in, right, I want to highlight what you and Adam just did for the VDC and Super Huddles. How many conversations did you transcribe into that Google Doc? I saw you post about it the other day internally. It was a crazy amount of conversations and meetings all wrapped up and summarized into like the most important.
Yeah, we'll take the transcript out of these meetings, which any tool can do, right? Like Zoom and Google Meet or Teams and all that stuff. It'll transcribe meetings, but what's crazy is what you can do with that transcript. And so, yeah, like Adam and I will go back to those transcripts all the time and, look for things that stood out or themes or summaries that, maybe we didn't even catch. And honestly, Brian, that's another topic in this too, of just like the transcript alone is incredibly powerful. I mean, it's funny that Zoom meetings took off in COVID, which makes sense and obvious, but like what didn't take off was the tech in these meetings and being able to take notes and summaries and documents and stuff like that. So yeah, it's pretty powerful.
So you're saying the transcript is the RCP file to your E57.
Whoa.
Is what you're saying for the folks out there.
Yeah. I mean, it's just fascinating to think how you can use some of this stuff. And like I said, I just think this will for a while for sure be a tool that I'm like, hey, I'm a big fan of. And again, shout out. I think how you find these tools is also incredibly helpful. Like, I didn't really look at anything else. Like, Ben, appreciate you just sending it over and being like, yep, this is what I use. Go check it out. And so I don't know. It's pretty cool when you can really take a shout out from someone or a referral from someone and just like, okay, cool, you're off and running. All right, should we transition here? Last topic. Take us down the home stretch here.
Let's do it.
Switch.
Connor, cut.
Oh,
all right.
cut.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it down the home stretch. Had to be there. This is an interesting segment. I think, Adam, you want to kind of give us some preface of what you were thinking kind of in this one?
Yeah, the old you had to be there. We say that quite a bit. But in our roles, I think the three of us have quite a bit of travel to different industry events, different conferences. I mean, we put on our own events that throughout the year through the country. And so this last week, actually, the idea for this segment popped up because, Grant, you were in DC at the Revisto conference. I was out here in Reno at a very different but similar, or I guess very different, but another type of event with the ASC schools construction student competition event. And so the idea here is just, hey, as we travel around the country through the year, these different events, just kind of come back together, chat about it, what we like, what we didn't like, what we learn, those sorts of things. So that's kind of the setup for this one.
I particularly want to hear from both of you. What are the things that I couldn't find on the online recordings of the presentations? Right? Like what are the rumors behind the scenes? What are people worried about? What are, what's going on in the side table talk at the hotel bar after?
Yeah. I mean, well, first off, like there's so many events. I mean, I was truly talking to someone this last week about it, of like, how do you choose? Like, let's just even start there. Like, how do you go from like, oh, that sounds interesting, to like, it's on my calendar, to I'm going to travel to it, to like, I got to take away from my normal, day-to-day stuff. And that to me is a whole topic to dive into as well. And even Brian, to your point, like, hey, I think you go to these things because of the hallway talk, because of the meal talk, because of the expo hall talk, and the things that, aren't necessarily on the program. And it is fascinating to think, how to attract people to come to these events is truly the program, right? It's the program and the people. And it's funny what I think events are truly tapping into that, saying like, hey, the program and what you'll take away, and whether it's a breakout session or truly just like networking time. Like that's a big thing of what we're trying to do for our event, is just building in networking time. Like, hey, we want to give you the chance to, talk to folks and get to interact and, go do the things that you probably came here to do, but you didn't realize that's what you came here to do.
I think that point is a good one to underline though too, because we have, I hope, and I think we're going for a pretty wide audience here. Like it's going to vary. The reason as to why you go to these different things is going to vary depending on your persona. Whether you're again, superintendent at a GC, you're going to go probably looking for tools, very specific technical data on what can I employ on my next job. Whereas, if you work for a different organization, you're in a marketing capacity or something along those lines, there's more networking, learning, those sorts of things too. So depends on who you are.
Yeah. I mean, I guess Adam, just to even like camp out on ASC stuff, right? Like my first question to you would be just like, why go? Like, what, I mean, well, give a little pref of what ASC is, because I'm sure some folks don't know about it. And yeah, just like why we chose to go and be a part of it.
This one is near and dear to my heart, which also is probably why I came up with this segment. But the Associated Schools of Construction, if you guys aren't familiar, it's a pretty massive organization that spans the country. It really enables the students of construction management, civil engineering, different construction related courses in university setting to get together, train outside of the classroom, learn, and then ultimately compete. So I competed as a student with the Sacramento State Design Build team for 4 years, and then I coached for a number of years. I've been doing the math. This is my 17th year attending this event in some capacity, whether it's as a student, a coach, a recruiter for Turner, now as a drone deploy employee. But ultimately, the event is really designed for the students to compete, as well as for faculty and industry to get together. So I think a pretty, not to go super existential here, but big thing is going to be the future generations of our industry. And so one big piece to that though is, how are these construction management programs, how are they adapting to new technology? How are they updating their curriculum as we go through time? And so this event gives faculty an opportunity to be in the same room, be at the same conference floor with a number of different current tech providers. So besides us, Drone Deploy, Autodesk, Procore, who else was there? Bluebeam. There were a number of, kind of household name big tech companies that are there to give presentations. If you scroll down, you just turned it off. But if you go back to that page there, Grant, on the schedule, you can kind of see where the different events and different talking points are. Kristen Peterson here gave a presentation for Drone Deploy as well. So to your point about why are we there, or what are we doing? The goal here is we have a whole .org nonprofit arm at Drone Deploy that is really interested in a number of different outreach and philanthropy. But one big piece also is that we've created some training and educational resources for different education programs out there. Brian, you were part of this effort as well. And so a lot of what we're doing is trying to teach faculty about Drone Deploy and what reality capture is and how they can incorporate, our tools and others into their curriculum. So that's ultimately why we went, was to network and get in front of those faculty folk.
Well, what are you saying too, Adam? Like, this is like the biggest career fair, like on the West Coast, or what were you saying the other day about it?
Yeah. As part of this, and really this whole event is really around the students. But if you think about it, there's a lot of tangents that come from this. If you put really the cream of the crop of the CM departments across the country into one big room on a conference floor, you're going to attract a lot of industry that are trying to hire right now in a market where they need a lot of great people. And so what results from that is on Saturday morning of this conference is one of, I believe, and again, you can fact check me on this, but I think it's one of the largest construction focused career fairs on the West Coast through the year. I don't remember what you were scrolling through those logos there. I mean, I think there's 70 plus of, Brian, you said it before, the ENR list, right? I think it's the top 100 of ENR show up to this event to do nothing but recruit. Personal experience as a student competing in this is kind of a fun thing. It's the closest I'll ever be to a celebrity. But once you're done giving your presentation on Friday morning, that room full, 100, 150 people that are watching your presentation as a student, majority of that room is recruiters from all these companies. And as you walk out, as you leave the room, when your presentation is done, it's like you're getting pulled in 10 directions. If you did well, you're getting pulled in 10 directions saying, hey, come to our hospitality suite tonight. Hey, come see me at the career fair on Saturday. We want to interview you. It's a pretty cool experience as a student, as a young person.
And what a cool way to see how somebody performs, on things you can't see in a resume, especially with the team. And just like public speaking skills, I know is a tough thing for a lot of people, but if you're in school, work on your presentation skills. Like, it will pay dividends in anything, especially if you're in anything field focused. Like, that's the biggest superpower you can have, is you could have a conversation with an owner, a foreman, every single different type of personality throughout a day. And you kind of have to switch between how you kind of present to everybody. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, as a coach, a lot of what our emphasis is putting on, public speaking. How do you interact? What are your interpersonal skills? And those are the things truly on display at this event. And that's what a lot of our recruiting efforts, when I was recruiting, is like, I want to see who is leading that team. How well did you enable your teammate to answer a question better, or did you jog something in their memory to spark it for them to answer that question properly? It's a pretty incredible event.
Adam, can I ask you kind of a question, or Grant, if you want to go ahead?
No, go for it.
Was there any, obviously, this probably doesn't get talked as much about, but one of the probably frustrations of students in schools is, things are evolving so rapidly that wherever they get out of their program, do they feel equipped for the reality of construction? Like, do they, are they like, what are they learning to schedule with? Is it, Primavera P6, or are they building 4-week look aheads in Google Sheets? Right. And like, how are we adapting to that? But also, what are contractors starting to, it seems like there's a lot of collaboration now between the contractors and the programs. Could you speak any like topics you heard about all there?
Yeah, there's a couple ways to go about that, right? I had a number of different conversations from a faculty perspective, or the educational program perspective. The programs are challenged with, we see the ever-changing landscape of technology, and it's like they can't adapt every semester to a different tool to teach it a different way every time. And so what ends up happening is they fall back to teaching, to your point, scheduling in Microsoft Project, which at the basics of it, the foundation, it's not bad. You're still learning about logic ties. You're still learning about predecessors and successors, but are you really learning a cutting edge tool? Not so much. And then on the industry side of things, as a recruiter, you're looking at resumes differently now. It used to be that you'd put the Microsoft suite of Excel and PowerPoint and Word on your resume. And, we're seeing now in the industry at these career fairs, students with resumes that say, Drone Deploy, Revit, CM Builder, Plot, like all of the, the companies, the tech tools that are out there and emerging. And it puts a greater emphasis on a recruiter to say, do they know what those tools are? Do they know why that would value this candidate, or what it would do for their company as they move forward, to bring that talent, that pre-existing knowledge into their organization? So, I don't know if I answered your question directly, but like, those are a couple things that, from my perspective, are again changing the way we go about teaching construction management education, and then recruiting for it in the real world too.
Yeah, I think just to summarize some of this, like, big shout out. You said it earlier, Adam. You talk about the Bluebeams, the Autodesk, the Procores, the Drone Deploys, like they all have .org arms of their software company, right? And that doesn't just like, oh, like cool, we have it on a postcard and we can talk about it. Like it's actually doing things, right? I mean, you two created a whole curriculum for some folks just to say, hey, like here's this tool, here's how you can use it in your program and in your syllabus and in your classrooms. And I mean, I remember Bluebeam was like kind of the start of that way back in the day. Like I remember them getting into our lab spaces when I was in school, and then Procore followed suit, and then Autodesk followed suit, and Drone Deploy followed suit. Like it's fascinating to see, I think, the different types of software companies that are starting to understand, hey, if these kids learn it in school, they're probably going to come out and want to get it within the tools and, really just the platforms that they have at the, employers that work with. And then the employers are like, heck yeah, if you already know how to use that tool, I don't have to, invest in the training of getting you up to speed. And, we should put a link to this video that we were showing there a little bit. Cause I mean, you can even see it in the hotel rooms and these students using all these different tools. And shout out to, I mean, we didn't mention this, but like shout out to the companies that sponsor these projects, right? Like they're the ones that are investing and seeing how these kids are solving these challenges and how they, approach these projects that they maybe, saw different challenges on when they were building it. But yeah, I would just say to put a bow on kind of the events, and you had to be there kind of segment here is like, if you're looking at events to go to, I would highly encourage you to go to events where you can be a contributor and where you can be a consumer. And where are you going to consume information to help you grow and, obviously develop as your role and what you're doing, but also look for events where you can contribute, whether that's sitting on committees, whether that's investing in students, whether that's investing in whatever your company is that, you want to see grow. Like as you're putting together your event, 2025 calendar together of what you're going to go to, like, I don't know, just think of those two topics of when are you going to be a contributor or when are you going to consume something for your own kind of personal growth. So,
and to that point, Grant, maybe just to add on to it is like for the construction professionals, the day-to-day job site folks, like who don't really go to a lot of these events, right? Like in my past life, I didn't go to very many conferences because I was busy on job sites every day. Don't count these out. Like there's stuff out there that you could go and spend. Yeah, it's going to take you away from your job site for a day or two, but go and learn a little bit. Go see what's happening in industry trends. Just go expose yourself to what's happening at some of these conferences. Maybe not necessarily ASC, but a lot of these tech conferences will have good information that you will benefit from. You may find something new from a networking perspective. You may meet somebody that will benefit you later down the road. So the normal job site staff that isn't attending a lot of these types of things, put together an events calendar and go to one or two of them a year.
Yeah, I'm sure this will be.
I'm just going to plug. I was going to say, I just wanted to plug the superintendent community for those who may be in a scenario where they can't get away. Maybe they just had a newborn or something like that. If you're trying to do something virtual, Adam, I think this would be a good plug for the superintendent community.
Yeah, totally. Superintendent community of practice is something that we've created that is really intended to be superintendents talking to other superintendents so that we can share knowledge, right? The supers of the world is, from my perspective, an underserved community that, really, we're not necessarily, we superintendents aren't necessarily a very communal folk, tend to get locked into the, what's happening inside of our job site fence, every 6 months to 3 years, depending on what your project lifespan is. And so this is an opportunity to really just network with superintendents across the country from all different markets, all different company types. But yeah, we can link the sign up page, the sign up application sheet for that. We're up to 60 plus superintendents all over the country and doing some cool stuff. We have a superintendent summit coming up in a couple of weeks, and we meet monthly. It's as little or as much time as you want to put into it. But yeah, thanks, Brian. I wasn't expecting a plug, but happy to take it.
Yeah, and the maybe behind that too is just like giving the opportunity to have that connection happen virtually, right? I mean, I think you said it, Adam. Like it's hard when you can't leave the job, but there's certainly things that you can do, while you're at the job, whether you're, taking a break or late hours or working weekends and things that, that can be time that you can learn and grow from others. But sorry, Brian, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, Grant, do you have the slide of the swag? Maybe we could put it together a little Easter egg if you've made it this far in the podcast.
Let's see if I can pull it up here.
So the first person to see this post on the Built Different LinkedIn and message us super or comment the word super on the post with an exclamation point if you want, or no exclamation point. It's up to you. You get to choose one of these, and Grant, you could probably handle the logistics on how that works.
Thanks for that, Brian. I think I was wearing the sweatshirt last week or on last week's
episode. You win a lightly worn sweatshirt.
I promise it won't be mine. But yeah, I think to that point, one thing that we just want to do in this kind of opportunity is just engage with you all. So yeah, I appreciate you guys if you've made it to the end here, and hopefully some good topics, some things that don't often get talked about, or just kind of fun water cooler talk that the three of us like to talk about. But yeah, I hope these are interesting to you guys, and you are encouraged by just some of the stuff that we're trying to elevate and just bring more insight to. So this one was fun. Sad the football is over, but we'll transition into March Madness here soon. Maybe we'll think of like a segment bracket. Maybe we come up with like 32 segments and narrow it down to like the final 4 that we have each week, or I don't know.
Oh, see, I thought I was nodding yes, because I thought you were going to say we need to have a segment where we present our brackets and then we see at the end of the tournament how well we did.
I don't know about that. I wouldn't say that I'm good at picking the bracket. I can definitely, I don't know. I always lose in those office pools, but they are. I tend to pick something and then root against my picks, and that's just it's a weird dynamic to be in. I always want the underdog, but no, it'll be good. Well, appreciate you guys tuning in. Encouraged by conversation. Thanks for the insight, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the next one.
Later, boys.
Bye.
Thank you.